Welcome to Book Briefs. I'm your narrator, and today we are diving into a modern masterpiece of self-reflection, 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think, by Brianna Wiest. This book is more than a collection of writing. It is a masterclass in cognitive reframing. Wiest's work is designed to help you move past self-sabotage and into a life of radical self-mastery by challenging the very way you interpret your world. If you'd like to support this channel and get your own copy of the book, check out the promote link in the description below. The core purpose of this book is to bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be by shifting your internal dialogue. It matters because, as Wiest argues, it isn't our external circumstances that hold us back, but the subconscious narratives we carry about them. In this summary, we will explore the 6 foundational pillars that will help you dismantle your old ways of thinking. 1. Your emotions are not the enemy. We often try to suppress pain, but Wiest teaches that difficult emotions are actually internal GPS signals. They exist to guide you toward healing, not to hurt you. 2. Discipline matters more than motivation. Success isn't a result of feeling inspired every day. It's about the systems you build. Motivation is fleeting, but discipline creates the consistency necessary for real, lasting change. 3. What you resist persists. Avoiding uncomfortable truths only gives them power over your life. Growth begins the moment you stop running and start accepting your current reality. 4. Your thoughts shape your reality. You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you are. It is the meaning you assign to events, not the events themselves, that dictates your happiness. 5. Comfort can block growth. Safety is a trap. While staying in your comfort zone feels secure, it is often the very thing preventing you from reaching your potential. True evolution requires stepping into the challenge of the unknown. 6. Healing is your responsibility. While it may not be your fault that you were hurt, it is your responsibility to heal. No one else can do the inner work for you. A better life is built through the small daily choices you make for yourself. Prepare to shift your perspective. Let's dive into the summary. Your pain is not a glitch in the biological system. It is the system functioning exactly as it was designed to, acting as a relentless compass, trying to guide you back to yourself. The deep dive. Your emotions are not the enemy. In the opening essay of 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think, Brianna Wiest dismantles the modern obsession with toxic positivity and the pathologization of human discomfort. She posits a radical shift in perspective. What if your negative emotions aren't obstacles to a good life, but the very tools required to build one? The core philosophy: emotions as messengers. Wiest argues that we have been conditioned to view emotions like anxiety, grief, and anger as bad or wrong. This cultural conditioning leads us to suppress or distract ourselves from these feelings. However, she asserts that emotions are purely biological feedback loops. They are the body's way of communicating that a need is not being met, or that our current reality is out of alignment with our internal truth. When you fight an emotion, you aren't just fighting a feeling, you are fighting the messenger. We suggest that ignoring these signals is like covering the check engine light in a car with tape. It stops the annoyance of the blinking light, but it does nothing to prevent the engine from eventually exploding. Key concepts. The fallacy of constant happiness. Wiest challenges the idea that enlightenment or success means reaching a state where you no longer feel pain. Instead, true emotional maturity is the ability to process pain without being destroyed by it. 2. Resistance creates persistence. Drawing on the psychological principle that what you resist persists, the author explains that suffering is often just the second layer of an emotion. The first layer is the feeling, sadness. The second layer is the judgment of that feeling. I shouldn't be sad. It is the judgment that creates the most agony. 3. The discomfort of growth. Wiest differentiates between destructive pain and constructive pain. Constructive pain is the discomfort that comes with growth, boundaries, and honesty. If we treat all discomfort as an enemy, we accidentally avoid the very discomfort necessary to evolve. Actionable insights and frameworks. Wiest doesn't just theorize, she provides a blueprint for changing your relationship with your psyche. Emotional inquiry, the why method. Instead of asking, how do I stop feeling this, ask, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Anxiety often signals that you are living in a way that isn't true to yourself. Guilt signals that you've acted against your own moral code. Anger signals that a boundary has been crossed or an injustice has occurred.
The feel it to heal it practice. Wiest emphasizes that an emotion is a physical sensation in the body. To move past it, you must actually feel the physical sensation, the tightness in the chest, the heat in the face, without trying to think your way out of it. Once the physical energy is acknowledged, the mental narrative usually softens. Labeling without judgment. Shift your language from "I am anxious" to "I am experiencing anxiety." This creates a witnessing distance between your identity and your temporary emotional state. Examples in practice. Imagine a person who feels a persistent sense of emptiness. In a standard framework, they might try to fill that void with shopping, scrolling, or substances. Wiest's approach suggests that the emptiness is actually a spatial invitation. It is the psyche's way of clearing room for something new. By not treating the emptiness as an enemy, the individual can sit in that space long enough to discover what truly belongs there. Conclusion: the literary significance. Wiest's work functions as a bridge between Stoicism and modern psychotherapy. By reframing emotions as directional data, she moves the reader away from a victim mindset. You are no longer attacked by your feelings, you are informed by them. This chapter sets the stage for the rest of the book by establishing that the first step to changing your life is not changing your circumstances, but changing how you interpret the internal signals your body is sending you.
If you are waiting for the right time or a surge of inspiration to finally change your life, you aren't waiting for a miracle, you are waiting for a ghost. In the second essay of 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think, Brianna Wiest deconstructs one of the most pervasive myths of the modern age, the idea that high-achieving, happy people are simply more motivated than the rest of us. Wiest argues that relying on motivation is a recipe for stagnation, while embracing discipline is the only true pathway to freedom. The illusion of feeling like it. The core thesis of this chapter is that motivation is a feeling, and feelings are inherently fickle. Motivation is a chemical spike, a temporary alignment of mood and circumstance that makes a task feel easy. However, human emotions are subject to the whims of biology, sleep, weather, and external stressors. If you only work toward your goals when you feel like it, you have essentially outsourced your future to your fluctuating hormones. Wiest points out that the resistance we feel, the urge to procrastinate or stay in bed, is not a sign that something is wrong or that we aren't meant to do the work. It is simply a natural survival mechanism of the brain, which prefers the safety of the known, comfort, over the perceived threat of the unknown, growth. Discipline as the professional standard. Wiest draws a sharp distinction between the amateur and the professional. The amateur waits for motivation. The professional follows a schedule. Discipline is the ability to separate your actions from your immediate feelings. It is the structural integrity of your life. When you prioritize discipline, you build a system rather than chasing a goal. While a goal is a singular destination that requires a burst of energy to reach, a system is a recurring process that makes progress inevitable. Wiest suggests that the most successful people aren't those with the most willpower, but those who have designed their lives so that they don't need willpower to get started. Key concepts: the average day and the resistance. One of the most profound insights in this chapter is the focus on the average day. We often fantasize about big breaks or monumental shifts, but Wiest argues that your life is not defined by your extraordinary moments. It is defined by what you do on a Tuesday at 2 p.m. when you're tired and uninspired. Discipline is about mastering the mundane. Furthermore, Wiest explores the concept of cognitive dissonance. When we try to change, our brains experience a clash between who we were and who we are becoming. Discipline acts as the bridge during this uncomfortable transition. It keeps us moving forward when our minds are screaming at us to return to the comfort of our old habits. Actionable insights. To move from a motivation-based life to a discipline-based one, Wiest offers several implicit and explicit strategies. 1. Stop checking in with your feelings. When it's time to work, don't ask yourself how you feel about it. Your feelings about a task are irrelevant to its necessity. Make the decision once, at the start of the week or month, and then execute it without daily renegotiation. 2. Build scaffolding, the schedule. If it isn't scheduled, it isn't real. Discipline is much easier to maintain when you have a preset routine that removes the decision fatigue of figuring out what to do next. 3. The 2-minute rule. Lower the entry barrier. Since the hardest part of discipline is the start, commit to doing the task for just 2 minutes. Once the seal is broken, the resistance usually fades. 4. Value consistency over intensity. It is better to write 1 paragraph every single day than to write 10 pages once a month. Consistency builds the neural pathways that eventually turn a disciplined act into an effortless habit. The final transformation. Wiest concludes that the ultimate reward of discipline isn't just the work you produce, but the self-trust you build. Every time you show up when you don't want to, you prove to yourself that you are a person of your word. This internal reliability is the foundation of genuine self-esteem.
By choosing discipline over motivation, you stop being a victim of your moods and start becoming the architect of your reality.
Every war you wage against your own mind is a battle you have already lost. For the more you push against your shadows, the longer and darker they grow. In the pivotal chapter, What You Resist Persists, from 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think, Brianna Wiest explores the psychological paradox of avoidance. She argues that the very energy we use to suppress, deny, or run away from our discomfort is the exact energy that keeps that discomfort alive. When we label an emotion or a situation as unacceptable, we don't eliminate it, we merely anchor it into our subconscious, where it begins to govern our lives from the shadows. The core concept, the energy of attention. The fundamental premise of this chapter is rooted in the backwards law, or ironic process theory. Wiest explains that the human brain cannot effectively process a negative command. If you tell yourself, "Don't think about a white bear," the white bear becomes the sole focus of your consciousness. Resistance is in its simplest form a heightened state of attention. When you resist an emotion, such as anxiety, shame, or grief, you are essentially telling your nervous system that this emotion is a threat. Consequently, your brain stays on high alert, scanning for that feeling, which creates a feedback loop of hypervigilance. By trying not to feel something, you ensure that you feel it with more intensity and frequency.
A common barrier to growth that Wiest addresses is the misconception of what acceptance actually means. Many people resist their reality because they believe that accepting it is synonymous with liking it, condoning it, or giving up. Wiest clarifies that acceptance is not approval. It is simply the clinical acknowledgement of what is currently true. If you are angry, accepting that anger doesn't mean you want to be an angry person forever. It means acknowledging that, in this moment, anger is present. Resistance is the refusal to admit that the weather of your internal world is currently raining. Acceptance is putting on a raincoat and realizing that the rain will eventually pass, but only if you stop trying to scream the clouds away. Examples of resistance in action. Wiest provides several illustrations of how this manifests in daily life. The fear of fear. In the context of anxiety, the primary source of suffering isn't the initial flutter of nervousness, but the secondary resistance to it. We think, "I shouldn't be feeling this," which triggers a secondary spike of adrenaline, leading to a panic attack. Suppressed grief. When we refuse to mourn a loss because it is too much to handle, the grief doesn't disappear. It transforms into chronic numbness, irritability, or physical tension.
The shadow self. Aspects of our personality that we find ugly or weak are often the things we resist most. By pushing them away, we prevent them from being integrated and healed, leading to self-sabotaging behaviors that we don't understand. Actionable insights: how to stop resisting. To move past resistance, Wiest suggests a radical shift in how we relate to our internal experiences. 1. Name the resistance. The moment you feel yourself tightening up against an emotion, pause and say, "I am resisting this feeling right now." Labeling the resistance creates a meta-awareness that detaches you from the struggle. 2. Lean into the sensation. Instead of trying to think your way out of a feeling, drop into your body. Where do you feel the resistance? Is it a tight chest, a clenched jaw? By focusing on the physical sensation without judgment, you allow the energy to move through you rather than getting stuck. 3. The and technique. Practice validating your reality while maintaining your goals. Instead of saying, I can't be happy because I'm lonely, say, I feel lonely right now, and I am capable of doing something kind for myself. This breaks the binary of resistance. 4. Invite it to tea. Borrowing from Buddhist philosophy, Wiest encourages readers to treat uncomfortable emotions like a guest. If you stop fighting the monster at the door and simply let it sit in the room, you'll find it eventually loses its power and leaves on its own.
The chapter concludes with the powerful realization that peace is not the absence of uncomfortable thoughts, but the absence of resistance to those thoughts. When we stop fighting ourselves, we reclaim the massive amount of energy we were using to maintain those internal walls. In the vacuum left by resistance, growth finally has the space to begin. Moving forward requires the courage to be bad at feeling your feelings until you realize that feelings can actually break you. Only the resistance to them can.
You are not living in the world as it is. You are living in the world as you are, trapped inside a theater where your thoughts serve as the director, the scriptwriter, and the only lens through which the play is seen. In this pivotal chapter of 101 essays that will change the way you think, Brianna Wiest dismantles the common misconception that our external circumstances dictate our happiness. Instead, she posits that reality is essentially neutral, and the life we experience is merely a subjective projection of our internal cognitive framework. To change your life, you do not need to move to a new city or find a new partner. You must first dismantle and rebuild the machinery of your mind. The core philosophy, the mind as a filter. Wiest argues that the human brain is a meaning-making machine. We do not perceive raw data, we perceive interpretations. If you believe you are unworthy, your brain will scan your environment to find evidence of rejection, effectively filtering out moments of acceptance. This is not just a psychological theory, it is a physiological reality. Our subconscious mind prioritizes information that aligns with our existing belief systems. Therefore, if your internal map is one of scarcity and fear, your external territory will inevitably feel hostile and limited. Key concepts, the pillars of subjective reality. 1. The architecture of perception. Wiest explains that we don't react to what happens, we react to what we think about what happened. For example, losing a job can be a devastating tragedy for one person and a liberating catalyst for another. The event is identical, the reality is diametrically opposed. This suggests that truth is often less important than the narrative we attach to it. 2. The self-fulfilling prophecy. The essay emphasizes that our thoughts dictate our behaviors, and our behaviors create our outcomes. If you think you will fail a presentation, your anxiety will likely cause you to stumble, which then confirms your original thought that you are bad at public speaking. Wiest challenges readers to recognize this feedback loop. Your thoughts are not just reporting on your life, they are actively constructing it. 3. The power of cognitive reframing. Reframing is the process of consciously choosing a different interpretation of a situation. This isn't toxic positivity or lying to oneself. Rather, it is the recognition that since multiple interpretations of an event are possible, you should choose the one that facilitates growth rather than paralysis. Actionable insights, rewiring the lens. To transition from a passive observer of your thoughts to an active architect of your reality, Wiest suggests the following shifts. Identify the core script. Spend a day observing your inner monologue. Are you constantly telling yourself that things are hard, unfair, or impossible? Recognize that these are opinions, not facts. Once identified, you can begin to challenge their validity. The happening for me shift. When faced with an obstacle, move away from the victim-centric question, why is this happening to me, and replace it with, how is this happening for me? This shift in thought immediately moves the brain from a state of defense to a state of problem-solving and growth. Curate your inputs. Since thoughts shape reality, the data you feed your mind matters. Wiest implies that by surrounding yourself with empowering ideas, literature, and people, you provide your brain with the raw materials needed to build a more expansive reality. Master the pause. Create a gap between a stimulus and your response. In that gap lies your power to choose a thought that serves you. If someone ignores your text, you can choose to think they are busy rather than they hate me. The former thought creates peace. The latter creates suffering.
The expert takeaway. Wiest's message is ultimately one of radical responsibility. If your thoughts shape your reality, then you are no longer a victim of the world. You are the creator of your experience. By mastering your mental narrative, you gain the keys to a kingdom that no external force can take away. The world doesn't need to change for you to be happy. Your vision of the world does.
The most insidious form of self-sabotage isn't failure. It is the warm, sedating embrace of a life that is just fine enough to keep you from seeking more. In the 5th chapter of 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think, Brianna Wiest deconstructs the universal human craving for comfort, revealing it to be the primary obstacle to self-actualization. As a literary analyst, one observes that Wiest treats comfort not as a reward for hard work, but as a psychological dead zone where the soul goes to stagnate. The core concept, the evolutionary trap of the familiar. Wiest begins by addressing the biological roots of our stagnation. Our brains are hardwired for survival, not fulfillment. To the primitive mind, familiar equals safe, and unknown equals dangerous. This creates a paradox. Even if our current circumstances are mediocre, painful, or unfulfilling, our subconscious will fight to maintain them simply because they are known quantities. Wiest argues that we often mistake feeling comfortable for being happy. In reality, comfort is often just the absence of immediate threat. When we prioritize comfort above all else, we essentially tell ourselves that our current state is the maximum capacity of our potential. The danger of the middle ground. One of the most profound insights in this chapter is the danger of the tolerable life. Wiest posits that it is actually easier to change when things are cataclysmic because the pain of staying becomes greater than the fear of leaving. However, when life is comfortable enough, a job that pays the bills but numbs the mind, or a relationship that lacks passion but provides companionship, we enter a state of perpetual paralysis. This middle ground is where most potential goes to die, as there is no external catalyst forcing a metamorphosis. Resistance as a compass. Wiest redefines the sensation of discomfort. Instead of viewing it as a signal to retreat, she frames it as a growth pain. When you feel the friction of resistance, whether it's the anxiety of starting a new project or the awkwardness of setting a boundary, it is a sign that you are bumping up against the edge of your current self. Key concept, the feedback loop of stagnation. If you only do what you have always done, your world shrinks. Growth requires a deliberate stretching of the psyche. Wiest suggests that if you aren't experiencing a degree of discomfort on a regular basis, you aren't evolving. You are simply repeating a loop. Actionable insights, moving beyond the comfort trap. To break the cycle of growth-blocking comfort, Wiest suggests several cognitive shifts. Reframe anxiety as expansion. When the fight or flight response kicks in during a new endeavor, consciously relabel it as the sensation of your boundaries expanding. It isn't a warning, it's an initiation.
Audit your safety nets. Identify which parts of your life you maintain out of genuine love and which you maintain out of a fear of the unknown. If a habit or situation is kept only because it's what I know, it is a candidate for change. 3. Choose productive discomfort. Actively seek out small ways to be uncomfortable. This builds a courage muscle, making it easier to handle the larger, life-altering discomforts that accompany major breakthroughs. 4. Acknowledge the cost of stillness. Wiest challenges the reader to calculate the price of staying the same. What will a year of comfort cost you in terms of skills, experiences, and self-worth? Often, the cost of stagnation is far higher than the risk of failure. The literary verdict. Wiest's analysis in this chapter serves as a wake-up call for the modern soul. She effectively argues that the comfort zone is a psychological illusion, a gilded cage that prevents us from experiencing the full spectrum of human capability. To choose growth is to choose a life of intentional friction, understanding that the heat generated by that friction is exactly what is required to forge a stronger, more authentic version of ourselves. If you are not uncomfortable, you are not paying attention to your own potential.
You may not be responsible for the wreckage left behind by others, but you are the only one standing in the ruins with the power to rebuild. In the pivotal essay, Healing is Your Responsibility, Brianna Wiest confronts one of the most uncomfortable truths of human development. The person who broke you will never be the one who fixes you. While our trauma, upbringing, and setbacks are often the result of forces outside our control, Wiest argues that remaining in a state of woundedness is a choice we make every day we refuse to take the reins of our own recovery. Hashtag the core philosophy, responsibility versus blame. The foundation of this essay rests on the crucial distinction between blame and responsibility. Wiest acknowledges that it is deeply unfair to be tasked with cleaning up a mess you didn't make. However, she asserts that fairness is a human construct that often acts as a trap. If you wait for the person who hurt you to apologize, or for the world to balance the scales of justice before you move on, you are effectively handing the keys to your happiness back to the very people or circumstances that took it away. Healing is not about admitting that what happened was okay. It is about deciding that your future is more important than your desire for vindication. Key concepts.
The myth of the waiting room. Many people live in a psychological waiting room, believing that their life cannot truly begin until they have reached a certain level of healing or until their past is resolved. Wiest challenges this by suggesting that healing happens within the life you are living, not before it. You do not wait to be healed to start your life. You start your life to get healed. 2. Emotional sovereignty. Wiest explores the idea that we are the sole architects of our internal landscapes. When we blame our current toxicity, lack of discipline, or unhappiness on past events, we are adopting a victim narrative. While this narrative might be factually true, it is functionally useless. Sovereignty is the act of reclaiming your power by admitting, "This happened to me, but I am the one who decides what happens next." 3. The compulsion to repeat. Without taking responsibility, we are doomed to recreate our trauma in new relationships and environments. Wiest explains that healing is the process of interrupting these patterns. If we don't take responsibility for our triggers, we will continue to perceive the present through the distorted lens of the past. Actionable insights. Audit your why. Stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" which leads to rumination, and start asking, "What is this requiring of me?" which leads to action. The shift from why to what moves the brain from a passive state to a problem-solving state.
The 1% shift. Wiest emphasizes that healing isn't a grand cinematic epiphany. It is a series of microscopic choices. It is choosing to drink water instead of a third coffee. It is choosing to pause before snapping at a partner. It is choosing to complete one task instead of spiraling into digital distraction. Release the need for closure. One of the most radical insights in this essay is the permission to heal without closure. Wiest suggests that closure is something you give yourself by deciding to stop looking back. You don't need the other person to understand their mistake for you to be whole. Examples of the responsibility mindset. Wiest illustrates these points by contrasting two types of reactions to a broken heart. The person who avoids responsibility stays in bed, waiting for an apology that never comes, and eventually grows cynical toward love. The person who takes responsibility acknowledges the pain, seeks therapy or self-reflection to understand their own patterns, and proactively builds a life that feels good, regardless of their relationship status. Conclusion. Ultimately, healing is your responsibility is a manifesto for radical agency. It serves as a wake-up call to anyone waiting for a savior. By accepting that no one is coming to rescue you, you are finally free to rescue yourself. The essay shifts the definition of healing from a burden to a privilege, the privilege of becoming the person you were meant to be, despite everything that tried to stop you.
As we bring our journey through Brianna Wiest's 101 essays that will change the way you think to a close, it becomes clear that this isn't just a book about ideas. It is a blueprint for a total internal revolution. The core message is simple yet life-altering. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your thoughts. We've learned that your emotions, even the darkest ones, are not your enemies. They are messengers, pointing you toward the places in your soul that are begging for healing. We've seen that waiting for motivation is a trap. True transformation is built on the quiet, unglamorous foundation of daily discipline. And perhaps most importantly, we've realized that the very things we resist are the things that keep us stuck. By choosing acceptance over avoidance, we stop leaking energy into the past and start investing it in our future. Wiest reminds us that comfort is often the enemy of greatness.
If you are waiting to feel ready or safe before you change, you will be waiting forever. Growth is inherently uncomfortable, but that discomfort is the evidence of your progress. My final recommendation for you is this: stop being a passive observer of your own life. Take radical responsibility for your healing. Do not wait for someone to save you, for the perfect circumstances to arrive, or for your fear to disappear. Pick one small, disciplined action you can take today, not because you feel like it, but because the person you want to become needs you to do it. Your mind is the architect of your reality. Start building a world you actually want to live in, one thought at a time. This has been your book brief. Now go out and change the way you think, so you can change the way you live.